Hello, and welcome to a Skyrim thing. I was playing Skyrim the other day and got to thinking about the daily powers and how they're mechanically very strange, but that sent me down a rabbit hole of thinking about the racial abilities, powers, and bonuses and how they compare. So I'm going to talk about those racial abilities, powers, and bonuses because Bethesda made some decisions and there's some weirdness in there that I feel like calling attention to. Before we dig into it, I want to give a quick shout out to my members, currently on screen. These folks go above and beyond to support the channel, and I'm very grateful to them. Being a member is never required, but always appreciated. Thank you. And now, say hello to Sneaky Summon the Orc. You may remember them from my earlier video on Skyrim's emergent storytelling. Wait, is it him? Sorry, her. You may remember her. I clearly don't. Same character, same sneak conjurer, same quality of life mods. Mods are on screen and linked in the description, you know the deal. Anyway, doesn't really matter, that's just the background gameplay because I'm not leveling 10 characters for B-roll. Do you think I got that kind of time? Instead, let's talk about what picking a race in Skyrim actually does, because it's not entirely clear from the sort of wishy-washy descriptions each race is given during the character creation process. They're actually written in a way that I will always connect with Destiny weapon trait descriptions. It's gotten a bit better, but my OG Destiny players in the back will remember the lengthy community debates over which adjective was stronger before we had concrete numbers to attach to everything. In any case, what's determined by race in Skyrim isn't really any different from earlier Elder Scrolls games. Each race gets a passive or two, or three, or none in the case of Orcs, a daily power, except for Khajiit, but we'll get to that, and a bunch of bonus skill levels, though no free perk points. A few races also get starting spells, and Orcs are, again, the odd ones out because they get the Bloodkin status that lets them walk into Orc strongholds without the inhabitants hating you. Which is, I don't know, jury's still out on that. It's neat for roleplay purposes, but it doesn't really give you much. In more interesting news, here's a chart of the starting skill bonuses the races get. It's in Excel because I'm a huge nerd that genuinely enjoys Excel. Ooh, chart. When I started working on this video, I really thought that I was going to delve into the weeds on basically this chart specifically, but these starting levels just don't matter. Even if we look at only the most impactful bonuses, so only the ones that give you 10 levels in a skill, that's really not all that many levels when level 1 isn't that much worse than level 10. This is because your level in a skill doesn't matter nearly as much as the perks you unlock, since perks are the vast majority of your power gains throughout a playthrough. Gear too, obviously, but in terms of your character, it's all in those perks. Arguably, it's even a good strategy to pick a race that has bonuses to none of the skills that you intend to use through your playthrough. That will give you a lot of levels early on, and therefore a lot of skill points to spread around as you see fit. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on this because this is not a video about Morrowind, but as a point of comparison with an alternative system, in Morrowind, and Oblivion, though arguably to a lesser degree in that game, your starting skills are quite impactful, because being under level 30, give or take, means you're probably going to miss your attacks about half the time, which obviously greatly reduces your damage output. In comparison, skill levels in Skyrim barely impact your damage output at all. Advancement is effectively all in the perks. Without any perks, at skill level 100, you only deal 5% more damage than at level 1. With the straight damage go up perks, you deal about 226% more damage at max skill level. Let's just ignore that your damage in Morrowind at level 100 is 649% higher than at level 5 because, well, that would be inconvenient for the claim that Skyrim has more power growth than Morrowind. Getting to level 10 from level 1 also doesn't take very long, and they don't push you over the threshold needed for getting the second perk point in any skill tree anyway. Maybe I should make a melee Dark Elf to prove my point. In any case, while the bonus skill levels that you get from your race selection are pretty completely irrelevant, there's still passive abilities and active powers to consider. Real quick disclaimer, though some of you have probably already written comments about it, I will mention survival mode stuff later. I personally see survival mode as essentially a mod and rather removed from the vanilla experience that we've been playing since 2011. As such, it makes more sense to discuss separately. But I will mention it, just in a bit. Chillax thy feisty fingers. And since I'm playing an orc, let's start with them. Orcs get no passive abilities. None. Okay, they get something for survival, but like I said, I'll get back to that. However, orcs get a top-tier daily power in the form of Berserker Rage, which lets them take half damage from all physical sources and deal double damage for 60 seconds once per in-game day. Berserker Rage is why I'm playing an orc for this character, by the way. In the prior video with this character, I mentioned that the playstyle I'm going for is a stealth archer that uses summons to tank for them instead of backing away and attempting to re-enter stealth. I'm using sneak attacks, but I will happily go loud once I get spotted. For this playstyle, Berserker Rage gives me a few options. I can use it from stealth to deal an incredible amount of damage on that opening shot, or I can use it when my back is up against a wall and I need the damage reduction and damage output to get out of a hairy situation. And speaking of daily powers in Skyrim, it's time for a tack tangent. So this is a serious question. Why are there daily powers in Skyrim? Like, I know the origin of them. The Elder Scrolls is ultimately a descendant of the Dungeons & Dragons rule set. Daggerfall is damn near just literally a D&D adapted for real time. Each entry is increasingly removed from D&D, but there's some lingering elements in there all the same. But what I'm really asking is, what's the mechanical purpose of daily powers in Skyrim? Like, okay, so in Daggerfall, unless I'm forgetting some one-off quest that doesn't, every single quest has a time limit attached to it, and you outright fail the quest if you don't complete it in time. The time it takes to travel out to the dungeon, and back if you don't just recall, the time you spend in the dungeon, any time you spend sleeping to recover health, magicka, fatigue, it all adds up. There is a mechanical incentive to be efficient about the time you spend doing things in Daggerfall, which is a really cool system and I appreciate it a great deal. It's one of my favorite things about the game, actually. In a game that establishes that kind of relationship with the passage of time, having daily powers makes a lot of sense. You have to be choosy about when you use them, because you only have so much time to spend, and thus only so many potential uses of that daily power in any given quest. But in Skyrim, I'm sure there's a quest or two I'm forgetting where you have to be in a certain spot during the night or whatever, and there's probably at least one with a time limit of some kind, but broadly speaking, you can sleep for 24 hours whenever you want in Skyrim. The hour and 12-minute cooldown, yes, that's how long a day is in Skyrim, can be easily negated by sleeping or even just waiting, making dailies more of a per-encounter ability if you choose to play it like that. So why not just give it a cooldown of 10 minutes or something? At 72 minutes, I'm either just gonna sleep to reset it after every fight, or just forget that it exists for multiple play sessions at a time. Anyway, tangent over. Lizard folk hailing from the humid lands of Blackmarsh, Argonians get one of the more interesting passives in the form of a constant water-breathing effect. That would be worth more if there was more stuff underwater, but, you know, it's a thing they can do, so that's cool, right? They also get a bonus to unarmed damage, since they have claws. Only 6 additional points of damage, though. And there's no hand-to-hand skill. Yeah, I know about the Fists of Steel perk and the Gloves of the Pugilist, and how they don't work with the Fists of Steel perk because they're light armor, but the damage bonus that Argonians get to unarmed is half as strong as the bonus that Khajiit get. so kind of a non-starter. Finally, Argonians get a flat 50% chance to resist contracting a disease whenever that gets procced. It's a handy enough trick. Nothing groundbreaking, because it's actually pretty simple to get cured of disease, as several comments on my video about emergent narrative pointed out. On the plus side, Argonians get a pretty solid daily power in the form of Hist Skin, which grants 10 times faster health regeneration for 60 seconds, once per in-game day. Hist Skin brings your passive healing up to about 5% per second, meaning that you can burn through 3 times your total health bar during those 60 seconds and be just fine. It's not invincibility, but it's pretty good, and since it's based on a percentage, it scales with you throughout the game. I'd say it makes up for the lackluster unarmed bonus. Argonians, they ain't terrible. Hailing from a storied lineage of legendary battle mages and influential sorcerers, Bretons, they can resist magic 25%. That's their passive ability. That's it. It's a flat 25% reduction in damage taken from all magic, so it's nothing to turn your nose up to, though its value in Skyrim is a little bit questionable. There just aren't that many mages to run into. Still, good stuff against Hagravens and Spriggans and Atronachs and whatever might end up hurling spells at you, so it's certainly not without value. Thankfully, Bretons also get the daily power Dragon Skin, which gives them a 50% chance to ignore all damage from a hostile spell while also absorbing the magicka cost. It's only a 50% chance, and it's only for 60 seconds, and it's only once per in-game day, but being able to shrug off half of a mage's spells is pretty good. I just want to explicitly point out that Bretons get a 50% chance to ignore damage from spells, while Orcs get a 100% chance to take half damage from all physical sources, which you run into much more frequently. One of these seems way better than the other. Dragon Skin is still decent as they come, though. And speaking of spells, Dark Elves are next on the list. Where Bretons are especially skilled in supportive or defensive magics, Dark Elves lean much more into the offensive schools. For passives, Dark Elves get the beautifully self-explanatory resist fire 50%. It's so self-explanatory I don't really have commentary on that. It's alright though. 50% effectively for free is nothing to sneer at. Unfortunately, the Dark Elves' daily power... yeah... Ancestor's Wrath is... it's just the Flame Cloak spell. But you can only use it once every 72 minutes. And you can't dual cast it, which gives the spell version nearly 5 times the range. But it doesn't cost any magicka. The benefit here is that Flame Cloak is a spell that only starts showing up in random loot at level 23. And it's an adept level spell with a base cost of 289 magicka. At level 50 destruction, you can bring the cost down by half, but that's still fairly late in the game relative to how accessible Ancestor's Wrath is right out of character creation. It's fine. I just don't like how hard it drops off throughout a playthrough if you lean into the playstyle it encourages. The more interesting angle to Dark Elves is that they're probably the best race if you intend to contract vampirism. Their natural resistance to fire counteracts vampirism's weakness to fire, though it's probably still advisable to wait until you're a high enough level that the negative attribute modifiers during the day are no longer completely debilitating. Negative 60 to your starting attribute values of 100 is a really steep cost after all. I haven't tried a Dark Elf vampire build yet since noticing that little confluence, but I'd like to at some point, maybe in a future video. Like and subscribe, you know how the YouTube game is played, but thanks, genuinely. If Dark Elves focus on offensive magics, then High Elves really go full bore with it. Their favored skills are all in the magic category, which no other race does, so the intent here is very clear. But the skills are kind of pointless as already discussed, So let's look at what else they bring to the table. First, High Elves' passive ability is a 50-point higher pool of maximum magicka. While this isn't scaling, it's a 50% boost at the very start of the game, and is super significant in the early game. It continues to be pretty useful even into the late game, as it contributes to how much magicka you regenerate per second, as it's based on a percentage of your maximum. Yeah, it's only half a point per second in combat, but look, I'll take whatever I can get. However, that half a point of additional regen is boosted all the way up to 12.5 points per second with the High Elves' active power, Highborn, which allows for 25 times faster magicka regeneration, which, let me tell you, basically feels infinite. You can turn into a walking nuke for 60 seconds with Highborn. Imperials are a curious case because their passive ability isn't a combat thing at all. Instead, they get a 100% chance to get 2 to 10 extra gold pieces anytime they loot a gold-containing container, where container includes your fallen foes. It adds up faster than you might think. Imperials only get the one passive, but they also have an active power in the form of Voice of the Emperor, which allows Imperials to calm all NPCs up to level 99 within a 75-meter radius. Being effective up to level 99 makes Voice of the Emperor the most powerful calm effect in the game, though it only works on NPCs. However, that means it includes vampires, even without the Master of the Mind perk. You know, come to think of it, it's really weird that Imperials don't have speech as one of their starting skill level bonuses. Half of the speech tree is all about selling to merchants after all, and the other half is all about influencing people. And another race known for their mercantile interactions, though again lacking bonus levels in speech, are the Khajiit. For passives, Khajiit have claws, granting them additional damage with unarmed attacks. However, Khajiit gain 12 points of damage, double the 6 points of damage that Argonians get. Frustratingly, the in-game text for this passive states that the bonus should be 15 points of damage, but it's actually 12 in practice. This kind of error is just constant in Skyrim, and it's honestly really tiring needing to have the UESP open to get the right information. UESP, I love you, but I really wish I didn't have to use you as much as I do. Even though the in-game text is wrong, Khajiit are still easily the best race for unarmed play, but why would you? And sadly, it doesn't get much better when it comes to their active power, Night Eye. We need to talk about Night Eye. Nights in Skyrim are far from dark. They're so far from being dark that I frequently forget that it's night and get confused for a moment when I try to enter a store and find it locked. So Night Eye is already of questionable utility, and then it has the audacity to look like this. Yeah, so I'm never using this. A nearly useless passive and a borderline detrimental active power. Yeah. I love the Khajiit, but they're mechanically the worst race available in Skyrim, and it's not even close. If this was a tier list video, they're easily in the failure tier. At least they get to use their active power more than once per day. Not that you would want to. After the disappointment of the Khajiit, Nords are up next, and it's not going to be hard to impress after that. Nords ship with the passive ability to resist frost 50%. This is functionally identical to the fire resistance of Dark Elves, but applied to frost effects instead. The real takeaway here is that Nords only suffer from half of the slowdown effect from frost attacks, making them much more effective melee combatants against ice sorcerers. All like 6 of them in the entire game, but you know. Nords also get Battle Cry, which forces enemies to flee for 30 seconds, enough to get some healing done and or limit your assailants to a single enemy for a brief time. I'm not a fan of fear effects because they generally mean I have to chase enemies down when I could be dealing damage to them instead. Some people like these effects though. Redguards are next on the chopping block, and they have a simple passive ability, 50% poison resistance. reducing their damage taken from poisons by half. There's not that much in the way of incoming poison damage in Skyrim, but that also means it's usually unexpected, and the damage over time can really sneak up on you, so the additional resistance is handy to have. However, Redguards also get the Adrenaline Rush active power, which grants them 10 times faster stamina regen. I don't really know what that does for you though. I mean, you functionally can't zero the bar out, so you can do that whole shield bashing stun lock thing, but you can also do that with soup, and the soup lasts longer than 60 seconds and doesn't have a 72-minute cooldown, so... Wood Elves! Wood Elves get... Actually, they get a couple neat things. They get the passive abilities of both Redguards and Argonians, so they can resist both poison and disease by 50%. Either of these on their own is decent enough, but they get both, and that's even better. However, the active power for Wood Elves, I don't think it holds up, so maybe that's why they get double passives. Wood Elves have the ability to, once per day, make an animal an ally. What does that mean? Well, basically what it says on the tin, but I asked that question myself, mostly because of how bad Skyrim is about explaining the effects of things. It turns any non-NPC, non-humanoid animal into an ally for 60 seconds, meaning that they will shed all semblance of self-preservation and come to your aid. In other words, it's an on-demand meat shield as long as there's an animal you can use it on. It's niche, let's say, but useful when you can find a chance to use it. I'd still rather have the active power of a high elf or orc, though. Finally, at least until we talk about survival bonuses, there are a handful of other bonuses that some of the races get. I've already mentioned that Khajiit and Argonians have bonus damage in unarmed combat, and Orcs begin the game with the Bloodkin status, allowing them access to the Orc strongholds. There is one other bonus that characters can start with, and that's a single extra spell. Every character starts out with the Flame spell, but 3 races, that's Bretons, Dark Elves, and High Elves, begin the game with an additional starter spell. And I'm going to cover them in the opposite order of what I just said because I'm a quirky weirdo. High Elves begin the game with access to Flames, as does everyone else, and Fury, an illusion spell that causes any creature or person up to level 6 to attack anything in sight. In practice, I find that usually just means the player, even if there's a closer target they could pick. And now you're in combat and down 67 magicka. That's just plain worse than if you crouched and used a bow. Oh no, the allure of the sneak archer strikes again! Thankfully, Fury scales with illusion perks, and is useful during combat with multiple enemies to start some infighting among their ranks. Though it can be tricky to manage to land a hit on the person behind the guy wheeling on you with a great sword. Can you tell I'm not a huge fan of this spell? It's really cool and I want to like it. It's just not implemented nearly as well as I'd like it to be, unfortunately. Dark Elves get Sparks, since everyone already gets Flames, I guess. Sparks is, I don't know, it's fine. It fits with the destruction magic flavor that Dark Elves have going on, and it's an anti-mage tool, since shock damage drains enemy magicka. It also has slightly higher range than Flames or Frostbite. I don't really have anything else to say. It's a staple spell on a race that's built to make use of it. And finally, Bretons begin the game with Conjure Familiar, making them an excellent pick for a character that you intend to play as a conjurer. It's a simple spectral wolf summon, but it's a good enough first spell for the playstyle. Plus, with Bretons having 10 levels in Conjuration, the magicka cost for this spell is reduced by a small amount, bringing it just within range of our ability to cast it at level 1. Very nice. It still drains basically the entire bar in one go, but hey, it's something. There are also a handful of bonuses that only apply when playing in survival mode. Survival mode is a pretty intense system that I intend to discuss in detail at some point, but I really need more time playing with the system before I say anything definitive on it. That said, since this is a player race rundown, this video would feel incomplete if I didn't mention them all. So here we go. The beast races, Argonians and Khajiit, are able to consume raw meat without risking food poisoning. Pretty cool trick, and in my time playing with survival mode, it made it totally viable to scrounge for food when needed, rather than having to carry a bunch with me all the time, which was nice. Unfortunately, Argonians also have a drawback that they are 25% more susceptible to cold, which is the only negative modifier for any race in survival mode. It's also somewhat debilitating because Skyrim is really cold, you might have noticed. I'm not sure what sin Argonians are guilty of to deserve that punishment. Khajiit, however, flipped that script by having 15 additional points of warmth, because of the fur, obviously. All of the elves, dark, high, and wood, benefit from the same bonus of being able to resist fatigue by 25%, continuing a tradition of being pretty damn solid race selections. Nords, being native to these frigid lands, gain a whopping 25 points of warmth, putting even the furries to shame. And finally, Orcs, who get no passives in the vanilla game, are able to resist fatigue and hunger by 15% plus 10 points of warmth. Orcs continue to be totally baller. And yeah, I did say finally. Bretons, Imperials, and Redguards get nothing for survival mode. Couldn't tell you why. I guess the developers of the survival mode thought they were already good enough without. Which is interesting because I don't see them as being particularly great. For my money, High Elves and Orcs are far and away the best options for nearly any build, depending on if it's magic or physical, with a notable carve-out for Dark Elves going the vampire route. In fact, that's my takeaway overall. Khajiit are unfairly maligned, Orcs and High Elves are really good, and everything else is whelmingly meh. Thankfully, your choices throughout a playthrough are generally more impactful than your race choice, so you're free to pick on flavor, vibes, or just plain preference. Like, even though I know they're hot garbage in terms of mechanics, I still play Khajiit a lot because I like some of their lore and I think they're cute. But yeah, Orcs are really good. Don't sleep on Orcs. Like, for real though, Orcs don't seem like they'd make for a very good mattress. Too hard, too many pointy bits. Thank you very much for listening to me ramble, and consider dropping a like if you liked this video. I know everyone says it, but it really does seem to help. And for those of you still here, yeah, I see how fast y'all click off as soon as I say thank you. There's a link to my Discord where you can find some cool stuff. Gaming news, sales, that kind of thing. Just the other day, I shared that Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core is currently accepting signups for their closed beta? Demo? Whatever. There's also memes and cute things, like, look at this radish. Come on, that's worth a click. But at the end of the day, thank you very much for stopping by and lending me your ear. And, as always, have a great one.